Thank you. Okay, we are back. Verse 68, the existence that the entire world enjoys is borrowed from consciousness. It's delusion to think anything exists or stands apart from consciousness. Understand? So nothing exists without this knower, the subject, knowledge, conscious awareness, existence principle. So nothing can exist without this fundamental existence. So the existence of everything else is just a superimposition on this only existence there is, which is the subject conscious existence principle. And the Upanishad says that we jivas are that conscious awareness subject principle. We are not the body mind. The body mind is an object that occurs within the scope of our conscious existence, right? And the whole process of self-knowledge is to understand this and develop this objectification in regards to our body-mind complex, so that we can understand that everything exists because I exist. I am, therefore everything is. That mode of thought which assumes objects exist independently of our awareness is so habitual that it can only be rooted out by constant and varied contemplations of the same truth, which is there is only non-dual self. Conscious existence is of the nature of non-duality. There is only one existence, one reality. So this notion, this perception we have through our subtle body, of the objects existing far apart from our body mind, gives us this impression that reality is duality. What is this duality? The fundamental duality is the jiva and the other objects appearing within the environment of each one of these jivas. So this is so deeply ingrained in our understanding, because it is what our perceptions tell us. All our sense organs tells us that the objects are out there. But as we know, this is so because we don't really examine the mechanics of perception. And Vedanta is going to help us to examine our experience until we understand that the objects are just happening within ourselves. And what does that mean? It means that if I identify myself as the body, immediately I see the world as duality, because I become the body, and the body is, it is distant from the other bodies, the other objects. You understand? So if I take myself to be the body, and then immediately I am within this space-time paradigm, in which duality is reality. You understand? And why does that happen? Because of this persistent belief, notion that, I am the body mind, which is hard to, remove, to cancel, right? And that's what this phrase is saying. This is so habitual that it can only be uprooted or destroyed or canceled, by constant and varied contemplations are all these teachings of Vedanta that try to unfold this understanding or reveal this understanding to us from different angles with different words, variety of contemplation, of analysis, of experience, So different angle, because sometimes it does not click now, but it click tomorrow on a different context, on a different metaphor or example, or my mind is more clear in the next day and whatever. So all our gurus and teachers, they keep trying, to present us new examples and analogies. The teachings are more or less the same all the time. Of course, every teacher has its own way to, to present it, but it's the same teaching. That's what makes Vedanta the same over thousands and thousands of years. It does not belong to anybody. It belongs to Ishvara in the beginning, and everybody who is a link in this tradition keeps the teaching intact. Yeah? So it has to be presented with all these different varied contemplations of the same truth, that there is only you, there is only consciousness, there is only existence, there is only non-dual awareness, consciousness. Yeah? This does not mean that we will not will cease to experience the world of duality. So we are going to continue to experience apparent duality, because this whole manifestation is an appearance in consciousness in me. So we continue to experience these projections, but the only difference is that the yoni does not take it to be really real. You understand? So the objects appear, but that firm belief that reality is duality, I need to go and get things and run to avoid things, that things is just fades, and gradually it just fades more and more and more and more. And then the yoni is the one that sees duality but does not believe in the reality of duality, And the effect it has on the yoni is that he is relatively free from what happens, in this order of reality, because this knowledge about the only reality, which is this, the light of consciousness in which all of this come and go, it somehow it works as an immunization against the bad dreams, the nightmares that sometimes we experience in our awakening states. You understand? So if we experience a bad dream during the awakening state, and we know that the bad dream is in truth not real, what's happening in the world, and then that knowledge, if it is to the degree that it's properly integrated, it somehow it gives us a resistance or immunity against whatsoever bad dream that it's being projected by Maya. You understand? You understand, Karen?
Yes.
But it requires contemplation of the same truth. This does not mean that the world disappears, the world remains, but it's not taken seriously as before. It's not taken as reality. Objects will appear the same, but we will understand that their diversity, this plurality of different objects which appear to be outside of me, in fact, is just me. Duality will have disappeared, or rather will recognize that it never was, like the snake. Once we saw the snake in the rope. The snake is it's a brilliant analogy. It's only a rope, it's only consciousness, but we keep seeing the snake and then we get all excited and nervous and afraid, and and then once we see that the snake is the rope, and then this duality, this fundamental ignorance is removed. For something to stand apart from consciousness would require that there be something of which we are not aware. So it's an interesting logic. For something to stand, something that exists really apart from consciousness. Okay, no. I mean, you're talking about everything existing within consciousness. There is nothing existing apart from consciousness. No? And then for that to exist, it would imply that there are some things that we are not conscious about. There are things that exist outside of the scope of consciousness. So how can something happen outside of the scope of consciousness if everything is manufactured out of consciousness? You understand? It is impossible. So, but let's suppose that we would say, no, of course, there are things that exist and I'm not aware. I agree with Vedanta when it says that anything that I experience is not apart from my mind. In my mind is not apart from my consciousness. But how about things that I do not know? How about something that is happening in Moscow right now that I do not know? You understand? No? So there are things that we are not aware at a certain point in time, and which we become aware later. So, what is this? So there are things which exist independent of consciousness, then that would be the objection, you know? So first we say that for something to stand apart from consciousness, there should be something that is not, which is not illumined and known by consciousness. If everything that exists because it's illumined and known by consciousness, we say, when we say that there is something maybe that exists apart from consciousness, it means to say consciousness cannot know that. You understand? And then we have consciousness, which somehow produces a certain order reality. And then we have another real principle, you know, that is not called consciousness, let's say, or unconsciousness, you know, that produces another order reality, which is real. You understand? But then the answer for this apparent objection here is like, there is nothing that exists outside the scope of consciousness, and we should never confuse the mind and the intellect of the jiva for consciousness. So my intellect only experience, our intellect is a reflector. It reflects consciousness and illumines my environment, my field of knowledge and experience, so that I can experience, know, and transact. And then I say everything here exists within my conscious awareness, my mind, which, but how about things that are not in my field of knowledge experience, you know? And then we say, no, wait a moment, consciousness is not the intellect. The intellect is a reflector, and then you're gonna experience what is available in your environment, on your network of knowledge, because nowadays we have this informational kind of network that allows us to know things. And nowadays we don't know what's good knowledge and not knowledge. We're so confused, we don't know what's fake news or real news. But anyhow, everything that happens in this universe is known in consciousness. Doesn't matter if it's known by whatsoever jiva, you understand? So consciousness is present through all jivas, you know, of all the possible rains, you know, the vegetal rain, the trees and the birds and the creatures in the sea, you know, all creatures, they experience their consciousness, their environments, you know, by this consciousness. So there is nothing that exists apart from consciousness, you understand? Because it would have to be outside of the scope of consciousness, but since everything is made out of consciousness and illuminated and known by consciousness, nothing escapes consciousness, but consciousness is not the jiva's intellect. That's the point. We should not confuse consciousness with the intellect of the jiva, and much less with the perception. You know, intellect, it somehow, it uses perception and inference to know what it knows. Yeah? So, but consciousness is beyond the intellect, beyond perception, and beyond inference. So the perception, inference, and the intellect, the mind and intellect are instruments by which consciousness experiences everything that exists within itself. And we have an infinity of jivas, of all sorts of jivas. And in the in the consciousness of all these jivas, the world is known and experienced. There's nothing that exists outside of consciousness. It assumes that awareness, okay? But we have already shown that individual body mind is an object appearing in consciousness. So there is no room for confusion here anymore, or assumption, to non-duality. And there is nothing that can limit awareness, just as there is nothing that can limit existence. So this is another point. We have consciousness, awareness. There is nothing that can veil consciousness. There is nothing that can limit consciousness, you understand? Because consciousness is limitless, It's limitless, and there is nothing that really can veil consciousness, understand? Because consciousness is synonymous of existence. And we already determined that there is no such a thing as non-existence. Because to determine that there is non-existence, existence must be prior to determine there is such a thing as non-existence. Therefore, nothing can really veil, cover, or conceal consciousness. Everything exists within consciousness without canceling or concealing consciousness. Unless we would say, okay, but there are two consciousness, there are three consciousness, there are four consciousness, there are so many deeper and deeper, subtle and subtle consciousness. No, these things about that deeper and denser, it all belongs to energy, Maya. You understand? Consciousness is that which is attributeless. It does not have any energy to it, any quality, any property. You understand? It's just the background, the conscious existence background. There is nothing alone that, beyond that. The verse here talks about existence borrowed from consciousness, no? So as the objects would borrow their existence from Brahman. What can this mean? Can awareness be loaned out to whom and to what? When we perceive objects, we are merely experiencing ourselves through the media, the agent, the equipment called the individual sense organs, mind, and the body-mind complex. So when we perceive these objects, we're experiencing what? We experience ourselves, we experience consciousness, awareness. And awareness is experience itself through the body-mind complex. The existence of these apparent objects may figuratively be said to be borrowed from awareness in the same way a wave apparently borrows its existence from the ocean. In the same way, the ocean borrows its existence from the seawater. So either both the seawater and the wave, they are just superimpositions on seawater. Right? So likewise, all these objects that we perceive, they fundamentally, their substantial nature is just consciousness, and they apparently exist as if they would be, borrowing existence from consciousness. Okay, so we have numerous analogies explaining this principle. We know that there are an infinity of ornaments of gold, but do the ornament of gold really exist? What is the substantial essence of every ornament of gold? What is the reality of all ornament of gold? It's only gold. There's nothing really to the ring or to the, how you say, the color and whatever, you understand? Those are just names and forms. So likewise, all these names and forms that we experience in media, they are consciousness, and they are just appearing because of what? It's a superimposition of a name and so and form for the knower, for this conscious existence. Do they exist? Yes, but they do not really exist. They appear to exist. And how about me, the Jiva? You too, you appear to exist. Oh my God, and then we are going back to the same idea that nothing exists. Yes and no, because you exist. And you are not emptiness, you are the fullness of conscious existence. You understand? Limitless conscious existence. That's the only thing we need to understand. So our nature is full now. We are full because there is only conscious existence. Huh? Non-duality stands even when approximate in words which are the medium of duality. We might cry out against the logic of non-duality, but I know, as an example, I know I'm not God. I did not create this world. So what is this that I am one with everything? And then it means I am one with God. This is a little funny kind of confusion that people make between the nature, my fundamental nature as consciousness, which is the same fundamental nature of Ishvara, God, you understand? But the Jiva can say, I am Brahman, but the Jiva can never say, I am Ishvara, I am God, you understand? But my essential fundamental nature is the same. Therefore, I can also establish that I am one with God, but I can never really play God, you understand? Because God is a different principle. We have three principles in Vitya. Ishvara, God, Jiva, and the world, Jagat. No? So I cannot really say, oh, I am the world now. Why you are the world? Because I'm all over the internet. I'm all over the internet. I am the world. I am all the trees of my backyard because I put them all together and I hug them together like that. No, we can never be really one with Jagat. And we can never really play God in the sense, I am God. There is a lot of fantasy in the spiritual world that my God, my God and my God. No, God is God. A Jiva is a Jiva. But the fundamental, essential nature of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat is one and the same, and it is Brahman. You understand? This we can establish as oneness or non-duality. But the Jiva often makes a confusion and say, oh, if there is non-duality, it means I am God. No? That's a good idea. Oh, great. So I am God then. I am Brahman, I am God, so I can. And then the Jiva is going to say, putz, but how the hell I'm going to learn to create a parallel universe to project it? I want to have my own creation, my own manifestation, if I am God. So we need to understand those. There are no contradictions there. I did not create this world. We would, of course, be taking our stand again as an individual body mind rather than limitless awareness, but it seems inarguably true that the world of tangible objects is not the product of any conscious evolution on the Jiva's part. So long as we remain in duality, we remain a subject, perceiving object. Okay, as long as we remain in duality, we believe that I am this subject, because we don't really understand that this body-mind complex is an object. We take the object, the medium, the agent, the instrument, we take that to be the ultimate subject. So as long as we remain in duality, we remain a subject perceiving object. I had this discussion the other day with Claudia, and Claudia was telling me that I was, you is an object. And I was telling him, I'm sorry, but you are an object. I am the subject. So we had a long philosophical conversation because he was certain that he was the subject, and I was certain that I was the subject. So guess what? This body mind and that body mind both are objects, appearing in what? In consciousness, and consciousness is one without a second. Oh no, but my consciousness is different than one of Claudio. No, you understand? These subtleties need to be understood. I remember when Osho Rajneesh left the body and he says, people start crying and they say, what are you crying about? Where do you think I'm going to go? I'm going to be all over here, in the ashram. I'm going to be in the trees, in the birds, in the people, And at the time, I did not understand. I mean, he was not a good teacher between us. But I did not understand. He left the body. There was a lot of energy in the ashram, and I was hoping for epiphany, because I was looking in every tree, in every bird, to see the face of Osho Rajneesh. I want to see him because he said, I'm going to be there. So he was saying that his fundamental essential nature as conscious existence is the same fundamental conscious existence of all objects all over the world. So we are all the subject, and there is only the subject because there is only consciousness. But then the superimposition of apparent objects occur, and then we deal with it, we interact, we transact in this world of superimpositions, and then they have some utilitarian values. We need to live in Mithya, we need to behave like in Mithya. But we need to know that, the only reality, that the truth and the only truth is that everything is only consciousness. That is the most radical teaching of Vedanta. That is, nothing really exists, nothing really happens. Only thing there is consciousness, the subject conscious existence principle. From the higher standpoint, there are no objects to be accounted for by a perceiving subject. All is awareness. From the highest standpoint, the highest truth is that, that there are no objects to be accounted for by any perceiving subject, because all is consciousness. As the text proceeds to unfold the saying, you are that consciousness, the seeming division between the individual and the totality. Totality is the substratum of Jiva, Shvara, Jiva, and Jagat. As the text proceeds in the following verse to unfold the saying, the whole Vivekachudamani is unfoldment of this mantra, Tattvamasi, by the way. As it proceeds to unfold the saying, you are that, this appearing division between the subject, the individual, the Jiva subject, which is an individual, and the totality will be shown to be an illusion. You understand? It is a trick of Maya, the greatest illusionist, But should we require an entering explanation for the world as we perceive it, there is a provisional cosmology teaching that explains how awareness devolves through Maya into increasingly gross energy, which manifests until it appears as this tangible, physical, material universe we perceive. So we have the teachings on creation, which is a sort of concession to ignorance, so that our mind can also be satisfied. Because, okay, I accept, I understand, nothing really exists, but yet I experience this world, and I am called to transact in this world. And then let's try to understand how this apparent order of creation came into play. And then Vedanta explained, how Maya, how how the energies came into place, how it became the subtle elements, and how they begin divide and recombine, and then the primary elements were grossified, and then from there, all the other elements, chemical, physical elements, they start configuring and so on, and then we have this universe. So we have these teachings, but this is all ignorance. Well, we need to understand ignorance. As we know, Vedanta does not discard ignorance. They say, don't go there. He says, okay, we need to live in ignorance. So let's understand the rules and laws of ignorance, of Maya, and let's just follow the rules and understand a little bit how it's apparently coming to creation. And now we have to understand how we apparently need to behave here, right? For the sake of our otherwise having a good apparent life. This was alluded to briefly. Briefly. What is this? To briefly? Briefly is very briefly. Briefly. I don't think I understand that passage there. This was alluded to briefly. You know, what is that? Dave, tell me, because the see if Mark, because Mark freezes all the time he tries to talk.
And this was alluded to, meaning it was referred to or referenced to briefly. So we only talked about it briefly, or kind of a glancing.
Oh, and then the two briefly should be a two with two O's.
No, I don't necessarily agree with that, but this was alluded to briefly in our consideration of the gunas, meaning
Okay.
about the gunas. We talked about this
Okay.
station, but that's
Okay.
you know, we didn't delve into it. We didn't dive into it deeply.
Yeah, to alluded to briefly. Yeah, I understood. Yeah, now I understood more clearly. This was alluded to briefly. Alluded to, yeah, it was, yeah, we refer to it briefly in our consideration of the gunas. But as the above verse states, so long as we believe anything stands apart of consciousness, we are deluded. Although these energies, the gunas, and everything unfolds this manifest universe, we need to understand this manifest universe exists only within consciousness and not apart from consciousness, which is the only reality. That's what we need to keep in mind. Otherwise, deluded. This means, of course, that most everyone is deluded, of course. Those who posit a deity who is separate from the material creation, yet somehow the cause of it are certainly not accepted to this category. So those who posit a deity who is separate from the material creation, yet somehow the cause of it are certainly not exempted from this delusional category. So can anyone help me on this one? So those who posit a deity, posit is, if you conceptualize a deity which stands separate. Yes. Okay, I got it, yeah. If we believe that Brahman exists, or the universe exists apart from Brahman, you understand, we are deluded, because the universe exists within Brahman and not apart from Brahman. Those who posit a deity like Brahman or Ishvara, who is separate from the manifestation, and we as we often say, Ishvara exists also not separate from its manifestation, its creation. So Ishvara, Brahman, Ishvara, and the universe manifest exists not apart. So therefore, the creator or Brahman or God is not a deity that stands apart from the universe. You understand? So it is manifest as the universe. Those who posit a deity who is separate from the material creation, yet somehow the cause of it, are certainly also deluded. They are in fact in the rather difficult position of having to explain how God could have created something that did not exist in himself, as himself at a particular point in time and space. This is very nice, huh? So meaning to say, all those that somehow insist to see duality, what is the duality that this passage refers to? Duality is God and the universe, you know? No, there is no duality. There is only God, there is only Brahman, there is only the creator, you know, and the universe appears as a superimposition in the creator, okay? So those who see God as separate from the creation, they are in big trouble, you know? They are in rather difficult position. I'm having to explain how God can have created something that did not exist in himself. So the whole idea that creation, now we hear that God,
Yeah, I'm still in my class.
the idea that God has created the universe in 7 days, huh? And then what was there before he created the universe? You understand? Or if we say that it's a certain number of trillions of years or whatever, you know? So what was there before the creation? Understand? So where was God? And where God got the raw material to create this universe? You understand? So how can God create the universe? I mean, everything we do, we need to buy the materials. And we need to have the know-how, the intelligence, the design. Huh? So we need to have the intelligence, the knowledge, the know-how, and then we have to have the material. But God created this universe. And as far as time, so if it begins on a certain point, what was there before the beginning of creation? No, we say that Ishwara, Jiva and Jagata is beginningless. It has always been there. Because if we say that it began existing from a certain point, and then again and again we run into the same problem. What was there before? Was time there before? How can we measure time after creation? Huh? If not against another background of time, which is even, you know, larger, so that we say, no, there is another, you know, scale of time in which now it means to say we need to bring another universe. This universe is somehow borrowing existence from the previous universe. The other universe is getting old and whatever, and then we begin a different time scale. No, the universe is beginningless, has always been there, manifest and unmanifest, but always there. Everything is here cyclical. There is no absolute cause. Every cause becomes an effect, which later on that effect becomes a cause. The seed becomes the tree, only to again become the seed, so that the seed is going to sprout to become a tree, so that the tree is going to bring forth seed. You understand? So everything is, there is no real beginning or cause or anything. It's cyclical. The universe is cyclical. So these people, they're in very difficult trouble. I think that's why nobody's believing in religions anymore. I mean, this idea that, 100 years ago, 200, I believe, people used to believe that God created the universe 2,100 years ago. So they decide that, okay, so Christ came into place 2,000 years ago. So let's give another 100 years, 150, you know? And then I say, no, this is when God created the world, you know? And then science and archaeology and start discover that the universe exists billions and trillions of years. So that was a very bad teaching, a notion to say that God created the world just a few thousand years back, you understand? So this is trouble. I mean, nobody can really defend that position of beginning of the creation and how God created it and how God can remain apart or separate from creation. You understand? No, God can only create the universe out of itself because that's how it happens. Consciousness and the gunas out of this Maya, you know, the universe is project. Why? Because everything is only consciousness. The obvious indefensibility of this position is one factor in the growth of atheism in the West. Yeah, love of God can be a way of loosening our identification as an individual. Many people, however, just stepping back a little bit, many people, however, possess what they believe to be a love of God, and they are loath to surrender it, not realize that love of God is often knowledge of the self, misunderstood. Love of God can be a way of losing our identification as an individual body-mind. But unless we come to the clear knowledge of the self, we will remain in duality. Okay, so I will apologize. And in the next class, I'm going to finish this last paragraph because I need to go to pick up my car and the shop is closing in 18 minutes and I have to walk there. And we already passed the time. Sorry for the interruption, but it was all Ishwara with the storm. And Ishwara, Brazil is unpredictable. Anything can happen anytime. All right? Okay. Thank you all. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, thank you. See you next time. See you on Thursday, right? Q&As. So please send the questions if you can.
Ciao.
Much love.
Thanks, Lindo.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You too.
Hope your car is ready.
Yeah, it will be. I just hope I don't get that too wet